All right, so let's talk about protecting the crown jewels. Not literal jewels, of course, but something even more valuable in today's world. An organization's most sensitive data and systems, and that's where privileged access management comes in, or PAM for short. You've given us some really great resources on this, and I'm excited to dive in with our expert here to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, PAM. It's a topic that might seem, a bit dry on the surface, but trust me, it has some very real-world consequences. Look at what happened to Uber back in 2016. That data breach that exposed, 57 million users' personal information? A compromised privileged account played a major role in that.
Yeah, that's a stark reminder of what's at stake here. So first things first, if we're talking about securing privileged access, the system itself has got to be Fort Knox, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. The very system designed to protect everything else has to be virtually impenetrable. That means secure architecture from the ground up, a zero-trust framework. Every single request for access, you treat it as potentially suspicious.
Zero trust. That's a term I keep hearing more and more these days. Can you break that down for our listeners, like what that actually means in practice?
Imagine a company where everyone inside the building used to just be automatically trusted.
Right.
But with zero trust, it's like you're verifying ID at every door,
Right.
every hallway. You're constantly checking credentials, permissions before you grant any access. And it doesn't matter who is asking. And studies have shown that organizations that actually use zero trust principles, they experience significantly fewer security incidents.
Okay, that makes sense. So not just assuming anyone within the organization is trustworthy, you are verifying everything. What else is essential for making sure that PAM solution itself is secure?
Isolation of critical components is another key factor. Think of it like the compartments in a submarine. If one section gets flooded, the damage is contained, right? So you apply that same principle to your PAM system. You separate those core functions, you limit the impact of any potential breach.
So even if one part of the system is compromised, the attacker can't easily just access everything else. And I imagine tamper-resistant logs are also critical.
Absolutely. It's like having a security camera that can't be tampered with. These logs, they provide that audit trail, all the privileged access activity. And this makes it way harder for malicious actors to cover their tracks or erase evidence.
So we've covered how to make sure the PAM solution itself is secure, but what about fitting it into the company's existing structure? It's not like you can just, install it and call it a day.
You're hitting on a crucial point, organizational compatibility. Every organization, they have their own unique structure, their own way of doing things. The PAM solution, it can't be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole.
So what are some specific examples of features that make a PAM solution organizationally compatible?
Let's say you're a large company with multiple departments, each with their own systems and workflows. You need a PAM solution that can handle that complexity. Features like multi-department and subsidiary management, that becomes essential.
So you're not trying to force everyone into the same mold.
Exactly. And then there's federated identity and access management. This can be a real game changer for companies with a distributed workforce. Think of it, imagine it like a universal passport. It allows employees to access resources across all these different systems and applications, but using a single set of credentials.
So instead of remembering a million different passwords, employees just use one login to access everything they need, securely, of course.
Precisely. And this streamlined access, it doesn't just improve security, it boosts productivity too. Then you have things like granular access policies. You can define exactly who has access to what, down to a very granular level.
It's like having a master key system, but one that's incredibly detailed, customizable.
Exactly. And you need multi-tenant capabilities, especially if you're dealing with, subsidiaries or external partners. This lets you isolate different groups of users, manage their access separately.
That seems crucial for maintaining, good security, good control.
Absolutely. And then there's delegated administration. So you can assign specific admin tasks to different users or teams. Again, it's all about enhancing efficiency and security. And, of course, global visibility and reporting are absolutely essential.
So even though you're allowing this flexibility, this customization at the department level, you still have that kind of centralized oversight.
Precisely. You need that bird's eye view. You need to see what's happening across your entire privileged access landscape.
All right, we've talked about the security of the PAM solution itself, and we've talked about how it fits into a company's structure. What's the next crucial factor we should be thinking about?
Now we need to think about the nuts and bolts of your IT infrastructure. You wouldn't build a house on a foundation of sand, would you? The PAM solution, it needs to work it needs to work harmoniously with your existing systems.
Infrastructure compatibility. Makes sense. What are some of those potential compatibility roadblocks that we should be aware of?
Legacy systems are a big one. A lot of organizations, they still rely on older technologies. And you need to make sure the PAM solution can actually integrate with those systems and do it without requiring a complete overhaul. Otherwise, you could end up with a PAM solution that, it creates more problems than it solves.
Yeah, one of the resources that you shared mentioned a company that learned this lesson the hard way. They tried to implement a PAM solution that wasn't compatible with their legacy systems, and it ended up costing them a fortune in lost productivity and delays.
Oof, that's a cautionary tale if I've ever heard one. It just highlights how important it is to do your homework up front. Carefully assess your infrastructure before you even start evaluating PAM solutions. And it's not just about those legacy systems either. You also need to think about your cloud strategy.
Right, because more and more organizations are moving toward cloud-based systems, and that PAM solution needs to be able to keep up.
Exactly. Multi-platform support is key. The ideal PAM solution, it can handle a mix. On-premises, cloud, even hybrid environments. It needs to be adaptable to whatever platforms you're using. Windows, Unix, network devices, AWS, Azure, you name it.
So it's like you need a universal translator for your IT systems.
Yeah, think of it like that. And don't forget about API integration. This allows the PAM solution to seamlessly connect with all of your existing security and IT tools, SIEMs, DevOps tools, all that. It's like you're creating a centralized nervous system for your cybersecurity infrastructure.
Okay, so we've covered security, organizational fit, and infrastructure. What else should our listener be thinking about when choosing a PAM solution? So we've talked about making sure that PAM solution itself is secure, that it fits the organization, and that it's compatible with their existing infrastructure. But what about, keeping up with a company's growth? What happens when things change, like you add more users or move more systems to the cloud?
That's where scalability comes in. You need a PAM solution that can grow and evolve along with your organization. It's like planting a tree in a pot that's too small. Eventually, the roots are going to become constricted, and the tree won't be able to thrive.
So what are the key things to look for in terms of scalability?
Well, first, you need to think about user expansion. As your organization grows and you onboard more employees, you're inevitably going to have more privileged accounts to manage. The PAM solution should be able to handle this influx of users without, any performance degradation or security compromises.
Right, you don't want it to buckle under pressure just when you need it the most.
Exactly. And then there's cloud and multi-cloud scalability. As more and more organizations are embracing cloud computing, you need a PAM solution that can, seamlessly adapt to this shift. Whether you're using AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or a combination of different cloud providers, the PAM solution should be able to provide consistent security and control across all of your environments.
It's like needing a security blanket that can stretch to cover all of your cloud assets, no matter how much they grow.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget about license flexibility. Yeah. You don't want to be locked into a rigid contract that can't adapt to your changing needs. You want to look for a solution that allows you to easily adjust, the number of users, devices, or systems covered by your license as your organization evolves.
Okay, so we've got a secure, compatible, and scalable PAM solution. What's the next hurdle?
Now it's time to think about implementation. All those amazing security features are useless if the PAM solution is a nightmare to actually deploy and configure.
You're talking about ease of deployment. And I have to admit, the thought of implementing a complex security solution can be, a bit daunting.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be a painful process. The key is to choose a solution that's designed with ease of deployment in mind. And luckily, there are various deployment models available to suit different needs and preferences.
Can we break down those deployment models a bit? I'm curious about the pros and cons of each.
Absolutely. Let's start with cloud-based solutions. These are often the easiest and fastest to deploy. You don't need to worry about setting up and managing your own infrastructure because the PAM provider takes care of all of that for you in the cloud. It's like having a pre-furnished apartment, ready to move into.
That sounds appealing, especially for smaller organizations that may not have the resources for, a complex on-premise deployment.
Exactly. Cloud-based solutions are also typically more cost-effective up front, as you don't have to invest in expensive hardware. And they often come with automatic updates and patches, which simplifies maintenance and ensures you're always running the latest version.
But what about security? Some organizations might be hesitant to entrust their most sensitive data to a third-party cloud provider.
That's a valid concern. But remember, security is paramount for reputable cloud PAM providers. They invest heavily in protecting their infrastructure and meeting stringent security standards. You just need to do your due diligence, research the provider's security track record, and make sure they have the necessary certifications and safeguards in place.
So it's about choosing a trusted partner who understands the importance of data security. What about on-premise deployments? When would that be the preferred option?
On-premise deployments offer greater control over your data and security. You're not relying on a third party, so you have complete visibility and control over how the system is configured and managed. This can be appealing for organizations with strict regulatory requirements or those operating in highly sensitive industries like finance or healthcare, where data sovereignty and privacy are paramount concerns.
So it's about having full ownership and control over your security environment.
Exactly. But this control comes at a cost. On-premises deployments typically require more upfront investment in hardware, software, and professional services to get up and running. And you'll need in-house expertise to manage and maintain the system, which can be resource-intensive.
And then there are hybrid deployments, right? Those seem like they could offer the best of both worlds.
Hybrid deployments offer a balanced approach, combining the scalability and ease of management of the cloud with the control and security of an on-premise solution. You might choose to store your most sensitive data and credentials on-premise while leveraging the cloud for other PAM functions, like session recording or password management.
So it's about customizing the deployment model to fit your specific needs and risk tolerance.
Precisely. And regardless of the deployment model you choose, it's essential to focus on one crucial aspect: usability.
Right. Even the most secure and scalable PAM solution is useless if it's a nightmare to use.
A PAM solution is only as good as its user experience. If it's clunky, difficult to navigate, or requires extensive training just to perform basic tasks, people will find ways to avoid using it, which can undermine your entire security posture.
Oh, I've definitely encountered software that felt like it was designed to be as user-unfriendly as possible. It's incredibly frustrating, and it makes you wonder if the developers ever actually tried using their own product.
I hear you. And in the case of PAM, poor usability isn't just frustrating, it's a security risk. If administrators struggle to manage accounts and policies effectively, it increases the chance of misconfigurations or oversights that could leave your systems vulnerable. And if end users find the PAM solution disruptive to their workflows, they may try to find workarounds, potentially bypassing security measures altogether.
So what makes for a truly user-friendly PAM solution?
First and foremost, it needs a clean and intuitive interface that's easy to understand and navigate, even for those without extensive technical expertise. Think Apple products, known for their simplicity and ease of use. You want a PAM solution that's just as intuitive and user-friendly.
And it's not just about the interface, right?
Right. The PAM solution should also integrate seamlessly into existing workflows and access methods. You want to minimize disruption to the way people are already working. The goal is to make security as frictionless as possible so people are more likely to adopt it and use it correctly.
So it's about striking that balance between security and usability. You don't want security to be so cumbersome that it becomes an obstacle to productivity.
Exactly. And that means considering usability from both the administrator's perspective and the end user's perspective. Administrators need to be able to easily manage accounts, policies, and permissions, while end users need to be able to access the resources they need quickly and securely without jumping through hoops.
So it's about making security as invisible and unobtrusive as possible while still providing that essential layer of protection.
Precisely. And that's why training and support are so important.
You're right. Even the most intuitive PAM solution will require some level of training, especially for administrators who will be managing the system and configuring policies.
Absolutely. Look for PAM vendors that offer comprehensive training programs, either online or in person, that cater to different roles and skill levels. And make sure they provide ongoing support resources like documentation, user forums, and access to technical experts who can help you troubleshoot issues and get the most out of your PAM solution.
It's like having a security coach in your corner, guiding you through the process and providing support when you need it.
Exactly. And when it comes to support, 24/7 availability is crucial, especially if your organization operates across multiple time zones or has critical systems that need constant monitoring.
Right. You need to know that someone's there to help no matter what time it is or what issue you're facing.
And it's not just about break-fix support. It's also about having access to experts who can help you proactively optimize your PAM solution, troubleshoot complex issues, and stay ahead of emerging threats.
So it's like having a cybersecurity partner who's invested in your success and committed to helping you achieve your security goals.
Precisely. And just like with any partnership, you want to choose a PAM vendor that you trust and feel comfortable working with. Someone who understands your unique needs and challenges, and who can provide the support and guidance you need to make PAM a success in your organization.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. It seems like choosing the right PAM solution is a complex decision with a lot of moving parts. What's the best way to sum all of this up for our listener?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the security fundamentals to deployment models and, the importance of user-friendliness. But there's one crucial aspect we haven't talked about yet, and that's, the financial side of things.
You're right. We need to talk about cost and total cost of ownership, TCO.
Hmm.
Because even with all the impressive security features and user-friendly interfaces in the world, none of it matters if the solution just breaks the bank.
Exactly. And when I think TCO, I think about looking beyond that initial price tag. You have to understand all the costs that go into implementing and maintaining a PAM solution over its lifespan.
Absolutely. And those costs, they can go way beyond licensing fees. You need to factor in things like deployment, configuration, training, ongoing maintenance, support, even potential costs associated with security breaches
Sure.
or non-compliance. Okay, so how can our listener even start to wrap their head around these costs? Where do they even begin?
Well, the first step is understanding the different licensing models that these PAM vendors use. Some vendors, they charge on a per-user basis, meaning you pay a fee for each user who needs access to the PAM system.
Okay, so that sounds pretty straightforward.
It can be, but it's really important to consider how many users you'll actually need to cover, right? Because if your organization has a ton of employees who need privileged access, those per-user fees, they can add up really, really quickly.
Yeah, so it's not just about that per user cost. It's about multiplying that by potentially, hundreds or even thousands of users. So what are some other common licensing models?
Another common one is charging based on the number of devices or systems that are managed by the PAM solution. This could be, advantageous, especially if you have a smaller number of users, but a larger number of servers or devices that need, that privileged access control.
Okay, so instead of per user, you might pay per server or per device. Makes sense. But what about beyond just those licensing fees? What are some other significant cost factors that our listeners should consider?
Deployment costs can be a big one, especially for on-premise solutions, right? Because they often require hardware, software, professional services just to get up and running. If you're setting up a physical server infrastructure to host your PAM solution, well, those costs can escalate pretty quickly.
And don't forget about training costs, because you need to make sure your team knows how to actually use the PAM solution effectively, or you risk misconfigurations and security gaps, which, that completely defeats the purpose.
Absolutely. Investing in proper training is crucial. Think of it this way. A PAM solution is like, it's a powerful tool, but you need skilled craftspeople to use it effectively. And like any complex tool, it requires ongoing maintenance.
So ongoing maintenance and support costs, those are also part of the equation.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You'll need to factor in things like software updates, security patches, technical support from the vendor. Those costs, they can vary a lot depending on, the vendor and the complexity of your PAM deployment.
Sounds like a lot to think about when evaluating the costs of a PAM solution. So how can our listener make sure they're getting the best bang for their buck?
One approach is to calculate the potential return on investment, the ROI of a PAM solution. This means you're weighing the costs of implementing and maintaining the solution against the potential cost savings from reducing the risk of security breaches, improving compliance, streamlining operations, all that.
So you're thinking about PAM not just as a cost center, but as a potential source of savings and efficiency.
Exactly. And I know it can be difficult to quantify, like the precise ROI of security. But think about this. The average cost of a data breach now it's in the millions of dollars. And that doesn't even factor in, the reputational damage and loss of customer trust that comes with those incidents.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought for sure. And so investing in a solid PAM solution is almost like an insurance policy against those potentially devastating costs.
Precisely. And don't forget about the potential operational efficiencies that PAM can bring. By automating tasks, things like password rotation or access provisioning, you can actually free up your IT team. They can focus on, more strategic initiatives.
Right. So PAM isn't just about security. It's about making your IT operations more efficient, more effective. And that, of course, translates to cost savings.
Exactly. And those cost savings, they can often outweigh the initial investment in a PAM solution, which makes it, a very wise strategic decision for organizations of all sizes, really.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, is there any final piece of wisdom you want to leave with our listener?
Choosing the right PAM solution, it's not just about ticking boxes on a feature list or just comparing price tags. It's about finding a solution that truly aligns with your organization's needs, their culture, their risk tolerance. It's about, finding the perfect fit.
So it's a journey of discovery.
Yeah.
There's no one size fits all.
Exactly. And that might mean prioritizing ease of use over advanced features, or opting for, a cloud-based solution over an on-premises deployment, or going with a vendor who has a proven track record of, good customer support. It's about understanding your needs and making those informed decisions based on what's best for your organization.
Ultimately, it's about empowering your organization, giving them the tools they need to protect their most valuable assets and thrive in what's becoming an increasingly complex and challenging threat landscape.
Well said.
Well, this deep dive has been a fascinating exploration of the world of PAM. We've covered a lot. But, it's clear there's always more to learn. Cybersecurity it's an evolving field. And it's so crucial to stay informed, stay proactive.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and empowering. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about PAM, the better equipped you'll be to make those informed decisions that safeguard your organization. Thanks for joining us.